This is your go-to podcast for the breaking news across the NFL, while breaking down how this might affect your fantasy team's success. Are you ready to be a champ? Then welcome to Fields of Fantasy.
How's it going, everybody? It is your boy, Jonny B, and we're back here for DFS with Fields of Fantasy, and we are now into week 14. For those that play a lot of fantasy football, that is the last week generally before playoffs. So I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this podcast are having a busy week with their normal season-long fantasy teams, making sure they get in the playoffs. So don't worry, you're still going to get involved in that DFS action. We can help you with our picks to make it a little bit easier and hopefully quicker for you to make your teams and hopefully win yourself some money this week. And of course, 18 plus, begambleaware.org. When the fun stops, stop. Dowie, how are you? And how was your week 13?
You know what? I'm very good, and I had a very profitable week 13.
You did.
In the £2 competition, I come fourth. And in the £12 competition, I think I was in the 30s. I don't know, I won about 60 quid in a way on that one as well.
Yeah.
So, and I had another couple of little winners in the £2, but yeah, but we'll get onto that. Graham Coffey won the £2.
Nice.
Won £302, and he had 184 points. So it wasn't as high scoring week as we thought, because we thought it might hit the 200s, didn't we?
Yeah, we did do, but it didn't quite get there.
Now, 184 is pretty... It's around the high end, isn't it, when it wins that? In the £12 competition, DJT7, he had 174 points, and he got £991.
Nice.
And in the £75 competition, Patty Mahomes won. Enjoyed the name. Yeah.
Nice.
57 points, and he got £850.
100 and what? 57?
Yeah.
It just shows you that, because there's less people in there, you don't actually have to score absolutely huge to take some money in that league.
I think what it is in that league is, in the £2, and even the £12 one, to be honest, you have multiple entries, don't you? So
yeah,
if you'll have one entry which you think is going to hit. I actually didn't come fourth with that entry. It was the same as my £12 one, which still scored well, but my my £2 entry, what come fourth, I didn't play in the 12. I think if I played that in the 12, I would have been in the top 3 of the £12.
Nice. And would you have won the £75?
I would have won that easy, yeah. So
yeah.
But I think that's the difference. In the cheaper ones, people are throwing more entries in.
Yeah.
Where the £75 one, you throw your one entry in, and I think you got a lot more chance of hitting on that.
I think you do. I think if you get it right, and you get a team that scores, you're likely to be close to taking some money.
I think you only need to get about 170 in the £75 and you'll win.
Yeah, indeed.
I don't think you see the big scores like the £2 is always the highest one, unless that same person plays £12.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, before we get into our picks for this week, going position by position, a quick shout out to the JTT Cup. Of course, it is last week. They have their last week before the playoffs. And if you've managed to get into the playoffs starting this week, week 14, well done. I managed to scrape through by 6 points, all thanks to Big Pat Fryermuth and his 22.5 points or whatever it was, because I only scraped him by 6 points. So my tight end 2 was more than 6 points away from Pat's score. So that touchdown for him was pretty crucial. And good luck to everybody throughout the playoffs. And hopefully we get a nice few weeks, and soon we'll know the winner by the end of the regular football season. And if you're out, of course, what better time to join in and get registered for the 2025 season, where you can already donate, and the donations will go straight to the JTT Trust and help those poor kids and their families get through some tough times right before Christmas.
And I did see an announcement. They've just reached $3,000 already for the 2025 total.
pretty impressive, isn't it? When
Very good. I think they need
we haven't even finished this regular
14,000
season.
more to get to 50,000.
I think if the community can all band together, I think it's definitely it can be achieved, can't it? And hopefully we do, because I think it's a pretty amazing thing, and I'm pretty confident the community could pull together and get to that target.
Hopefully the bosses at Fanteam are listening and they're gonna put a little donation to it as well.
Yeah, yeah, and they should join in as well. Get a little team on Sleeper.
Yeah.
So excellent. That is a JTT Cup. Keep you want to keep following. Make sure you follow them on Twitter and you get all the information there. Let's move on to our picks then. Quarterback, who are you picking this week?
So I looked at it. Lots of quarterbacks I like this week. And I'll tell you the top 3 games in the total points with the bookies. Remember, you can bet on Fanteam as well. They have a sports book. But the high scoring game is Bills and the Rams, 49.5. Slightly bit of a drop then. It's Raiders vs Tampa, 46.5. And Falcons and the Vikings, 46.5. Rest are all a couple of points off then, about 44 points. But so the Bills and the Rams is the standout game. So what have I done? Avoided every game. I'm going to go cheap. And it's a bit of a gamble, but Derek Carr at 15.8 million. They're playing the Giants. They're full on tank mode now, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's them and Raiders. They don't want to win. They leak a lot of points. I think the last 3 games they've leaked 30 points per team. 30, 27, I believe the stats were. Derek Carr is one of them players. He has a massive week where he throws 400 yards, a few touchdowns, or they just run it with Kamara. I quite like him at this price and the matchup. I think this is a game where I would target Carr. And I think at 15.8 million, he saves you 5-6 million on the big boys.
I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's one of those which I'm not going to have Carr throughout all my lineups,
Yeah, for sure.
but I do like the idea of a stat within there, particularly with Carr. And then if you wanted like an MVS who's also pretty cheap,
Yeah, 10 million.
and you got a cheap core stack in there, and then you can build into some really decent skill position players around the rest of your team. So it opens up a lot of possibilities. So I don't hate it. I can see myself having 1 or 2 shares in that this week. For me, I've been looking across the slate this week. Like you, I think you can happily say that Hurts, he is the most expensive. He's probably got the most favourable matchup as well. So I don't hate spending the money at all for Hurts this week, playing the Panthers, and he's probably the most likely out of all the quarterbacks, I think, to score 30 plus.
Yeah.
Josh Allen. See, I'm not as comfortable with Josh Allen. I think he is capable of 30 points plus, but I think the way Buffalo play now is a little bit more conservative, especially against teams like the Rams where they should win comfortably. I can see that, but I can see them particularly in that game not being as high scoring as the bookies have it. So it could easily be a trap game. Tua though, I do fancy Tua. A lot more expensive now than he was, but for good reason. 320 plus points weeks in a row, a 23, a 28, and a 25. And I do believe the Jets are in such a disarray at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if Tua's form continues, and I really do fancy getting some type of Dolphin stack, whether that's with wide receivers or a tight end, or possibly the running back. But I probably would go more towards the wide receivers and tight end. But Tua's one that I really do fancy this week. I do think I'm going to have quite a lot of shares in him. Yeah. I also like Baker as well.
Yeah,
against the Raiders.
He's probably my second choice, to be honest.
And I fancy this to be quite a high scoring game. I think both defenses have been pretty weak. And I can see having Baker with some Raiders assets as well as potential Bucks assets is quite a good strategy, especially if you think this could actually be one of the high scoring games on the slate.
Yeah. There's quite a few. Like, I don't even mind Kyler Murray. The Seahawks always end up in shootouts now.
Yeah.
I'm being a bit burnt by Sam Darnold, so he's someone I'm avoiding.
Yeah, it's one I'm not really going to pick too much out of either. For me, my problem with Darnold is I can pay a couple million for 3 million for Allen or Hurts. I'd rather just punt an extra 3 million into those two and hope they score the 30 pluses. And then around him, I don't mind Purdy against Chicago.
Yeah.
And even Murray against Seahawks, I probably prefer.
Yeah, I think I do. Shall we move to the running backs?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I think I'm probably picking he's probably going to be the most owned running back, I believe. Garendo, is that how you pronounce it?
I don't know.
Uh,
Your guess is as good as mine.
so he's 12.1 million, and he's going to be the lead back for the San Francisco 49ers. Now CMC and Mason are out. He's actually had a small part this season, and he's been pretty good. He's had 4.9 yards per carry. He's caught 5 out of 6 targets, and he's had 2 touchdowns. Now, we know the 49ers are one of the best scheme teams when it comes to running the ball. Do I think he's going to score massively? I'm not sure, but at 12.1 million, he's very. It's just an easy pick, isn't it? Save money and spend it elsewhere and get a good return.
I think you're expecting a good return, aren't you? Especially for any San Francisco 49ers running back. I mean, they're schemed for their running backs to do well every week, aren't they, really?
Yeah.
So at that price, yeah. My only worry is that he's going to be so owned because of his price that, having too much shares in him are going to penalise you quite a bit, especially if he doesn't do very well, and actually going a different away from him could actually be more beneficial. I probably have shares in him, but again, I don't want too much ownership in Guerendo, or however you pronounce it. But yeah, it's one of those where even CMC when he's been playing, hasn't lit the world alight, has he? I don't compared to what we used to.
No, I just
And
don't know if he was ever fit though.
yeah, but even Mason, he had some good weeks, but he also had some pretty average weeks. So depends as well what 49ers turn up, because I think they've been pretty inconsistent this season. But I think, as I say, I'll have some shares, not all of them. Picks I quite like though this week, Kamara against the Giants. I think if you're high on Carr because the Giants are crap, you also have to be high on Kamara because the Giants are crap. He is the fourth most expensive running back on the slate. But I think for good reason. It could easily be a good Kamara game. I also got to say, if Irving is fit, and it is trending that he probably will be, I think, again, against the Raiders, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? And an easy play you can stack with your quarterback as well, because he could get involved in the passing game too. But you know what? I'm going to give you a little name, pretty cheap. 6.2 million.
6.2 million. I'll be honest, I haven't even been that far.
Sincere McCormick. This is obviously a big if, but Matterson and Samir White could easily be out again. And did you know that the Saints are the fourth worst team against running backs in fantasy this year? Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, no, actually, the Bucks are nowhere near that. But still, I thought he showed a bit more promise than Abdullah did last week.
I think he looked good.
I think he looked good. And at 6.2 million, I don't think he's going to be someone that many people are picking up on. It's not somebody that I'm going to think, you know what? I look at McCormick and think I want him in loads of my lineups. But in one or two lineups, really cheap, gives me a lot more money to play with elsewhere. I think it's one that, if you're listening, just consider, because all he needs is 15 to 20 points, and you're laughing at a 6.2 million return. Absolutely laughing. And And here's one as well. Kenneth Walker has not, as it stands, trained this week, and he's probably not going to train either. There is trending that he probably won't play. So if he doesn't, Charbonnet, I think we all know when Walker doesn't play, Charbonnet is more than capable of coming in. And if you see that Arizona-Seattle game being high scoring again, Charbonnet could easily get involved in both the running game and the passing game. I really like Charbonnet. I think he could easily be a running back one elsewhere, but and if Walker's not playing, I think at 9.6, again, cheap. I think there are some cheap options. You just got to wait for the stat. There's a lot of people that are potentially injured. Again, if you look at Irving and all of a sudden he trends down, would you then look at White at 13.7 million?
I think that's a move to make as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So at this stage, it's a lot of injuries, possibilities for running back ones. So just keep your eye out, and maybe you'll get some cheaper options and potentially pick McCormick at 6.2.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do a little team where I have Derek Carr, quarterback, Gorendo, and McCormick as my running backs. Imagine how much money I'll have to spend elsewhere.
Well, that's it. But you could probably have 3 running backs there, be able to punch a load of money in Barkley, be able to afford him, and then have Gorendo and McCormick next to him and still have loads of money elsewhere.
Yeah.
So if you go with Barkley, you've got to make a sacrifice somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad way to do it. Wide receivers then, where are you going?
Wow. I always like to target a team who looks poor in defence. So I'm going to go Mike Evans, 15.5 million. I think we've had him the last 2 weeks, haven't we, both of us? Because he come back from his injury and he was cheap that 1 week and it was a no-brainer last week.
Yeah.
So I think to have him a third week is simple. Wide receivers have a lot of success against the Raiders. Last week he had over 100 yards and a touchdown. You would probably think he'll get similar this week, wouldn't you, in the matchup?
You would. I'm just checking on his fitness because he is questionable. And he has missed practice so far. So
He might be
pay some he's got a hamstring calf because didn't he deal with a hamstring calf before during the game, I think, at the weekend. So at the moment, he's not really practiced at all this week. So they might be protecting him if he has got a hamstring calf problem, but one to keep an eye on.
But yeah, for me, perfect matchup, Mike Evans.
I think so. I think if he's fit, you play him. And if he's not, I think there's some cheap alternatives. Would you play Sterling Shepard potentially if Evans doesn't play?
Could play Mark Watson's mate, Trey Palmer.
Yeah. So there are definitely some options if he doesn't play.
Trey Palmer, 6.3 million, and McMillan is 6.2.
Yeah, and we'll get to another option when we get to tight ends as well. There's definitely options there at Tampa if Evans is not injured. Is injured, sorry. What other wide receivers I like then? JSN, Metcalf is potentially not playing at the weekend. And this is what I mean. Loads of picks here that we're thinking the people aren't playing. So you really need to keep an eye out. We're deep into the season now. Get into crunch time. Loads of players out. Keep looking. And, if Metcalf's out, you're looking at JSN, who 2 weeks ago against the Cardinals put up 19.7 points. No Metcalf on there. What's likely to happen? He's likely to get just as much ball, if not more. And that points could be 19. It could be towards 25. He's more than capable of it. He's had a 21, a 37 2 weeks 2 weeks before that Cardinals game in week 12. He's had 23 in week 2. And I think he's trending in the right direction at the moment this season. And I think I can see that Seattle-Arizona game being potentially high scoring. And JSN would then be an asset I definitely want if that's the case, if both teams are putting up points. Other wide receivers I like. Jacoby Myers, I do think that it is an asset I do see. Again, if it's high scoring, I don't just want to have a Baker Mayfield and another asset from Tampa. I want to put Jacoby Myers in there because I do believe if we're seeing as high scoring again, I would have thought he would be highly involved in the Raiders offense. So his ceiling could potentially be higher too. And it is the kind of, it's the storyline that I want to put within the lineup if I do have Baker. And I mentioned Tua as my quarterback. Why not Hill? And if Hill's been missing practice, but they do say that's probably cautionable because he's had injuries
I thought you were
that
going to
he's
say
been
because he's
holding.
had his 10th baby.
10th baby. Yeah, he hasn't got time to train. He's too busy feeding them. No, but Hill is, they're being cautious with him because he's been playing with an injury all season. So don't see questionable as he's not going to play. But if he doesn't, why not Jalen Waddle at the price he's at in Fanteam generally? You called it the other week, which I don't even hate Waddle this week either instead of Hill. And here's another one. If you're looking at the Falcons game against Minnesota are bloody awful recently, in particular, conceding points. And wide receivers and QBs can do well against them. And at the moment, Mooney is trending to be out. So then it makes London even more attractive. We've got used to the last couple of weeks. Falcons haven't really been on it like they have been at the start of the season. I think Cousins hasn't had very good weeks, but he's capable of coming back. And I think this is kind of a week where Minnesota aren't really playing as good as we've been used to at the start of the season. So can Falcons do well with their offense? And potentially, I do think London could have a good week as well.
Yeah, there's a couple of other also with Kirk because it's against his old team, so you could see him having
Point
the
to prove.
point to prove. Yeah, that's the one. I think AJ Brown, even though he burnt me a little bit last week, he's a really good price again. Good matchup against Carolina.
Yeah.
If you're on Hurts, AJ Brown at 14 is pretty good. And one player we haven't spoke about all year, and we haven't even this week, but I'm going to mention him because he gets a touchdown in every game. Westbrook Akine.
He does seem to at the moment.
It's hard. Jacksonville's a bad secondary. All it takes is one of them big touchdowns what he's been getting all
Yeah, true.
season.
Division game.
He's not someone I'm going to have lots of shares in, but he's someone now I'm going to probably consider.
I mean, that could be a sneaky game to get some assets in, to be honest.
Yeah,
I
because
think that's a game where a lot of people won't look as well.
Yeah, because I think Ridley's fairly cheap as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
What's
he's cheaper.
Ridley's 13.7. So yeah, I think wide receiver plenty of options, good pricing this week as well.
Yeah, it's not as many of those expensive options is there this week, which means you can be a lot more creative with your wide receivers. And there's going to be a lot of difference this week again, I think, at wide receiver.
Because I think I have now realised for sure. Well, I think we've called it most weeks, but I think we can be certain.
Yeah.
Fanteam prices are on the points for the week before because Jerry Jeudy is the most expensive pick at 19.7 and he had that monster week, didn't he?
Well, I'm pretty sure that you see the form.
Yeah.
That form, I haven't done the math, so I haven't really checked it out. But it's not based on the form for all of the season. I think it's based on the form for about 5-ish games.
Yeah.
So if they have a really good the week before, and say 5 weeks ago it was rubbish, all of a sudden their price change is going to go up dramatically. So you've got Jeudy here who had 40, and all of a sudden he's the most expensive wide receiver because his form average for the last 4 or 5 weeks is all of a sudden 21.
Yeah.
It's a bit crazy because he's had 12, 20, 14, 26, 14, 40 plus the decimal points. So I wouldn't be surprised if you divide that by 5, it's about 21.68, which is what they've given it. And then I do believe the pricing is then all based around for a lot of the players around 1 point in form per million ish, give or take a bit. You do get some differentials like Justin Jefferson because he's probably been raised price, but I feel like a computer does a lot of it and then they go in and edit some.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Should we go to tight end?
Yeah.
I'm actually going to spend a bit of dough this week. George Kittle, 15.6 million. I feel like you could correct me on this, but I feel like this is a bit lower now. I'm sure he was trending quite well. All the tight ends were trending quite high in price, weren't they?
Yeah, he only got 1.7 points last week against Buffalo, and he had a blank in Seattle, didn't he? Maybe he didn't play, did he? But
Yeah.
that 1.7 points, as I say, I think it's a 5 week average. So 1.7 week added into the current 5 week average really brings that price down. Well,
Yeah.
before you didn't have 1 week in the 5 weeks previous to that was lower than 15 points. So it's made it a lot cheaper.
So yeah. So we know Kittle's when he's on form, he's a high scoring tight end. And
Yeah.
I watched the Bears game on Thanksgiving against the Lions.
Yeah.
Who scored two tight ends? A tight end we haven't seen all year, Laporta.
Sammy, yeah.
So with CMC out as well, you got to feel like with Ayuk's out. I think Debo's playing, but he's still been a bit injured, hasn't he, this season? I
Yeah.
think he's playing with enough. I think this is a ceiling game for Kittle. So this is probably the week I spend a bit of money on him.
Yeah, I like Kittle. I think, as you say, against the Bears as well, I think they're almost resigned this season, wouldn't you thought?
Yeah, you would think so.
Yeah, because the only way they're getting in as a wild card, and I don't think there's almost no chance that's happening now. So yeah, I think I can see Kittle having a good game again this week.
Well,
Purdy's back as well, and that makes a difference.
looking at this, I might even double stack on my tight ends this week because I think you're gonna say the person who I was really in on as well.
Who's that? Cade.
Yep.
Yeah, it's an easy choice against the Raiders, isn't it? Third worst team against tight ends. Especially if Mike Evans isn't there, the Cade Otton ceiling goes a lot higher, as it's shown when Evans and Godwin were both out on IR. Otton was the guy who was pretty much number one target, wasn't he? So if Evans isn't there again, he's going to be number one target again, you would think. So at 13 points, it's pretty cheap for a number one target in that offense because Baker will find him, and Baker's had a pretty good season most of the season. So I do also like, by the way, Dallas Goddard also could be trending to be out. So if you want a real cheap option this week at tight end, how about Calcaterra, 6.2 million? A little bit of a punt, but he quite often gets involved in the offense when Goddard is out. I won't have him in many lineups, but it's another one which I'll have in one or two that just unlocks a bit more money to be able to spend elsewhere.
Yeah, I like this week, lots of choices.
I think there's a hell of a lot of choice.
Look, I really like a double duo of Kittle and Otton.
I can see that being in quite a few people's teams because I think the wide receiver is less. There's loads of options at wide receiver, but it's less clear. Yeah. And you start thinking if Evans is out, would you rather have a 13-point wide receiver or Otton? And I think I'd rather have Otton.
Yeah. And Kittle's going to be wide receiver one in 49ers, isn't it?
Probably.
And the Bears, we know, all allow points. So.
Without CMC there, who takes some of the short down passing work, he could get a lot more of that as well.
Yeah,
cool. So, DSTs.
So, I always do more DSTs from starting from the bottom.
Yeah.
Cheapest. And then I kind of stop when I find a team I really like. Now, this is... I do feel like Fanteam had sorted their pricing out on DSTs because we were saying every week, weren't we? It's just pennies.
Yeah.
I feel like this is one of the weeks where you can get bargain. The Saints, 6.2 million.
Agree, yeah.
You've got to target the worst offense. Giants are one of them, if not the worst. Doesn't matter if it's Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock, does it?
No.
You just target them. And I did watch actually quite a bit of the Saints game last week, and their defense did make some plays. So I'd be confident they'll definitely make plays against the Giants.
I think they're more than capable. And the Giants concede 12.8 points to DSTs on average over the season. So you could easily see that happen again. 40 sacks, 8 interceptions over the season. there's a lot of opportunity for DSTs against them, and the Saints are capable of taking advantage. And they would be my number one pick as well. That's the first name I looked at on the slate. Do you know who I do like though? If you've gone and had a few Derek Carr shares in your lineups, and then got some Saints assets, I don't hate actually flipping it over in another lineup and then putting the Giants DST in there as a way to differentiate your lineups from each other, give more chances. So just in case, the Carr has one of those weeks, which we know he's more than capable of having, where he makes some silly interceptions, and the Giants are capable of bringing those interceptions home potentially for a score. But it gives you more chances of doing well in the week, because if your plan A hasn't worked, your plan B in another lineup might have then come to fruition. And I don't see the Giants being particularly high scoring either. They are more expensive than the Saints, but I don't mind picking them up if I've had to say if I've got a lot of Saints shares elsewhere. But I would want the Saints over everyone else at the price that they are. Right. Easily.
I would agree.
Cool. So that has been all of our picks for week 14. Good luck to everybody who is getting involved in the Fanteam slate. Of course, if you haven't got involved yet and you've been enjoying listening and you want to create your own team, make sure you click on the link within the podcast description, because £2 free entry, no deposit required. All you've got to do is sign up through our link and you get a nice £2 entry for free to try Fanteam out, courtesy of us at Fields of Fantasy. And of course, if you do then end up depositing, you get some more extra free entries for the next 5 weeks, which sorts you out for the rest of the season. So there's a lot to be thankful for, and what a better time to start your Fanteam journey than right now as you get into the closing points and you get to see, who makes the playoffs and who doesn't. Although it's pretty clear, actually, the playoff picture, isn't it, in the AFC in particular, of who's going to make it and who's not. Not too many things to find out, is there really? Which is quite weird with 5 weeks to go, but get involved anyway. And we look forward to going through week 15 next week. Ta-da.